Namaskar. On behalf of IS deemed to be university, I welcome you all to the inaugural of the webinar series IWAVES 2020, International Webinars or Advances in E-Services, organized by IIS TAI, the International Cell, and the Department of CSIT of IIS deemed to be University Jaipur in association with Jaipur ACM Professional Chapter. IIS deemed to be university is among the pioneers in the state of Rajasthan in imparting quality education to women in different streams. It is known for excellence in delivering value-based education to students and encourages them to think innovatively. It particularly focuses on preparing students to become world-ready citizens who are equipped to take any professional and social challenges with an educated and empowered mind. IASU, being a leader in providing quality education from its inception in 1995, is celebrating its silver jubilee this year. IIS TAI is the international cell of IIS deemed to be university to facilitate international exposure and global experience to the students as well as the faculty members. It oversees and manages the existing and future international relationships, collaborations, and partnerships contributing to the university's strategic aim towards internationalization. The cell facilitates the foreign students with all adequate infrastructure, quality education environment, adequate lodging and boarding facilities. Let us come together for an international exposure. E-service is becoming increasingly important not only in determining the success or failure of electronic commerce, but also in providing consumers with a superior experience with respect to the interactive flow of information. From e-meetings to e-learning and getting products delivered to our doorstep, this new normal made is possible to adapt to the changing scenario and played a crucial role in enabling and facilitating our lives during the lockdown. This webinar will provide a forum for discussing emerging ideas and technical knowledge in the field of information technology and e-services towards meeting the need of a growing population and the challenging lifestyle. As a part of our university's tradition, we begin by invoking the divine spirits before initiating the day's proceedings.
सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा।
I now request Professor Vijay Singh Rathore, convener IWAVES 2020 and director IIS TAI, the international cell of IIS University, to acquaint us with the aims and objectives of the webinar.
Good afternoon, all of you. Am I audible now?
Yes.
So let me take the
Yes, sir,
privilege.
you are audible. You are
Thank you
audible,
so much.
sir.
Thank you so much. Let me take the privilege to welcome you all in the iWaves 2020, the international webinars on advances in e-services 2020. So iWaves are the international waves coming from India to the different 7 countries of the 7 seas, and we have initiated this endeavor after having a meeting with ACM Jaipur Professional Chapter, where I was given this task to conduct some webinars not only for the Indian students as well as for the foreign students. So we planned this, and today the day has come that we are going to start the first webinar in the webinar series of these 4 webinars in the line. The first webinar is today itself, then there will be second webinar on 15th of August, then 17th of August, and then 19th of August is the validation ceremony for the same. So I am thankful to all the speakers who have given their time for these webinars, especially Professor Vincenzo Puri from Italy and Professor Jyoti Chaudhary from UK. They are going to give their lectures today only. And other than those, we'd like to thank Professor Pastor from Philippines, Professor Joe Manuel Tavares from Portugal, Dr. Katerina from Australia, Professor Milan Tuba from Belgrade, Serbia, Professor Lance Fung from Australia itself again, and Professor Polkowski from Poland. So I hope that these webinars will be really a very nice platform for all the audience and students, researchers, academicians who are participating in all those webinars. They will be beneficial for them, and definitely we are going to learn so many good things out of those webinars. And in this COVID pandemic, as we all have suffered a lot during last 3-4 months during the lockdowns, but simultaneously we have learned how to live the life happily even after the disasters. And this IT e-services has given us the platform where the tasks have not been stopped due to the lockdown. We all were online, we all were doing our things, and now we can see that today the 7 country and the 7 continents of the world are gathering together online. And I would like to thank ACM Jaipur Professional Chapter, especially for giving me this opportunity to conduct this webinar series. I am thankful to Dr. Ashok Gupta, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has allowed us to host this webinar in the Department of Computer Science and IT and the international cell IISTI of the IIS University. So with that, I would like to again welcome you all to this webinar series, and I expect that this will fulfill the expectations of all the participants. Thank you so much. Welcome to IIS University. Welcome to the International Cell. Welcome to iWaves 2020. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. May I now request Dr. Ashok Gupta, Honorable Vice Chancellor, IS deemed to be University, to kindly inaugurate the official website of ISTI, the international cell, and deliver the welcome address.
Namaskar, one and all. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome you all to the international webinars on advances in e-services iWaves 2020, organized by the International Cell and the Department of CSI and IT of IS deemed to be University Jaipur in association with Jaipur ACM Professional Chapter. In this week-long series of thought-provoking international webinars from 13th to 19th August, we'll have with us eminent speakers, scholarly participants, and researchers from the IT and business world. Distinguished speakers from 7 different countries, including the UK, Australia, Italy, Poland, Philippines, Portugal, and Serbia will be sharing their knowledge on various topics. The IS deemed to be university has come a long way since its inception and stands on the brink of the third decade of its existence, having steered through a number of milestones along its journey, imparting cognitive and meaningful education and establishing a name for itself in the state of Rajasthan today. We stand out as a distinguished institution instrumental in providing career oriented education through various fields of study and research. The international cell of the IS University facilitates global experiences to the students as well as the faculty members by forming strategies, policies, and guidelines, providing opportunities, and implementing the action plans through setting up international standards, building international partnerships, arranging scholarships and funds, and enabling various international programs in celebration of our partnerships and to cement the furthering of such bonds in the years to come, I take this opportunity to announce the launch of the IISTI website and wish all present here today to partake in this collaborative spirit. Albert Einstein once said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited, imagination encircles the world. It is my sincere hope that all our esteemed speakers and participants in this webinar who hail from around the world will bring their imagination to bear on the innovative ideas they are sure to bring to these discussions in the field of e-services for sustainability. Once again, I welcome all the participants and speakers and express my gratitude for their presence. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I request Dr. Mahesh Bundele, Vice Chairman, Jaipur ACM Professional Chapter, to please share your valuable insights with us.
Yeah, good afternoon, one and all.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, it's Honorable Vice Chancellor Dr. Ashok Gupta, IIS University, Dr. Vijay Singh Rathod, Vice Chair, Secretary ACM Professional Chapter Jaipur, other dignitaries, and the speakers, Mr. Puri and other one Jyoti, and dear participants around the world. It's indeed a great pleasure for Jaipur FCM Professional Chapter as well as IIS University that we are hosting this wonderful webinar series which is going to last for next 6-7 days, and most important part of it is all the speakers are from different 7 countries, the participants are from different countries, and all the credit goes to Dr. Vijay Singh Rathod. He has that guts to make such kind of networking and have a kind of gesture we have now. It's really the topics of speakers. Professor Vincenzo Puri is going to talk about artificial intelligence for cloud computing and IoT, and other speaker, Professor Jyoti Chaudhary, is going to speak on older adults, information processing behavior about COVID-19 cure and prevention, or a qualitative study. Okay, so one of the topic is related to very important scenario we are going through last 5-6 months, and with that perspective, I hope that all the participants, guests, and the speakers here present here are safe and healthy, and with them healthy too in future. We have come across this situation all of sudden. Might be we are blaming China, and of course China is responsible for that. but it has given us, all of us, to think in a different direction, to adapt the advanced technologies, and to create a new normal situation around the world. And that's why throughout the world, this kind of webinar series, this kind of workshops online, now we are adapted to online workshops, online meetings. Otherwise, most of the teachers are the students, mostly the students who were from rural areas, or the teachers who were not adapted to or were very old, were reluctant to adapt these technologies. But this situation has made every mandatory to everybody, irrespective of discipline, irrespective of whether engineering, science, management, art, commerce, everybody had to learn it, had to adapt it. And we are forcefully going through this phase, and we are forced to think about the new era coming forward. So the topics are very prominent and very important. Artificial intelligence is taking its space in all corners of the universe, in all corners of, in all disciplines. Every task, every kind of problem you want to solve by the use of artificial intelligence or machine learning or deep learning. So I am give best wishes to the organizer, Dr. Vijay Singh Rathod and IIS University, and congratulate them too. And thank Professor Vijay Singh Rathod to organize this webinar series. I am thankful to the speakers, Dr. Puri and Dr. Jyoti. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
sir. I now request Dr. Anupa Jain, Organizing Secretary, iWaves 2020 and Head Department of CSIT, IIS deemed to be University, to propose a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Vyoma. Namaskar, everybody. Good afternoon. Professor Vincenzo Puri from Italy, Ms. Jyoti Chaudhary from UK, Professor Mahesh Bundele, and all the other esteemed guests who are available here. It is my proud privilege and honor to propose a formal vote of thanks on behalf of IIS deemed to be University at iWaves 2020. It is International Webinars on Advances in E-Services, which is being organized in joint collaboration with ACM Jaipur chapter. I'm deeply grateful to all our eminent experts who have connected from different parts of world to deliver their lectures. I'm sure their knowledge sharing will prove to be invaluable and thought-provoking for everybody. I also take this opportunity to thank all the participants who have actively registered in numbers to make this event a success. I hope that all the interactions and discussions being held in the upcoming sessions will be fruitful for everybody and they'll learn something or the other. And also it would result in sustainable solutions and the time of these crises of COVID-19. My thanks are due to Dr. Ashok Gupta, Vice Chancellor IIS deemed to be University, who have always been there to guide us and support us in whatever we do and giving this event its present shape. My thanks are also due to Dr. Rakhi Gupta, Registrar IIS deemed to be University, and Professor K. S. Sharma, Advisor IIS deemed to be University, who have always guided us and in organizing any event. Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. I close my note by thanking all my colleagues and technical staff at the IIS deemed to be University. Thank you, everybody, for giving all the support from planning to execution of this event. Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. I now request you all to kindly turn on your video so that we can capture this moment. I request you all to kindly switch on your video so that we can capture this moment, please. Thank you, everyone. You may now switch off your videos. May I now request the moderators, Dr. Geetika Vyas and Dr. Astha Parekh, to take over the further proceedings of the sessions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Vyoma ma'am. Before we begin the session, I would like to remind the participants that the feedback link will be active towards the end of the session and it will remain active for 45 minutes only. Namaskar. On behalf of the whole committee of IIS TIE, I take this privilege to welcome you all to the first webinar of IIS iWaves 2020, organized by International Cell and Department of CS&IT, IIS deemed to be University Jaipur. Our first guest for the day is Professor Jyoti Chaudhary, who holds the position of Professor of Information System at University of Hertfordshire, United Kingdom. She is a winner of 2019 award We Are Tech Women in the Academia category, along with many other awards and publications to her credit. She has extensive years of experience specializing in the investigating the social inclusion and adoption of information and communications technologies on society's marginal groups. Today, her topic for deliberation is older adults' information processing behavior about COVID-19, cure and preventions, a qualitative study. I welcome you, ma'am, and invite you for the talk.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me here. Thank you, Dr. Rator, and also all the esteemed members around the university. And well, I do hope that today's presentation about older adults' information processing behavior about COVID-19 cure and prevention, a qualitative study, will be useful and also very informative to all of you. As announced, my name is Jyoti Chaudhary. I'm a professor of information systems at the University of Hertfordshire. This study came around due to a collaboration that I have with Symbiosis International University in Pune. And the research study that we have done is such that they were undertaking the artificial intelligence, the quantitative part, and I was providing the qualitative part. And that is why even in my slides, you will find mention of the quantitative as well as the qualitative part. So just to let you know, the way I'm intending to take this presentation is that, well, I'll begin by giving a motivation, the reason for this study, and then to give the aim and the research question, as well as a literature review, the research methodology, findings and analysis, a discussion, and a conclusion, along with the limitations and future directions, will bring the presentation to an end. So just to begin with, well, all of you, I mean, thank you to the internet. Today, we are all connected. So the internet is something that has been part of our lives now for almost 2 decades. We have been talking about e-services today. E-services have been undertaken in both the public and the private sectors. That has led to e-banking, e-government, anything you can think of. Along with it, the internet has led to immense information. And this immense information has led to, in some ways, ignorance as well.
Jyoti ma'am, I'm interrupting in between. Can you please on your camera?
Yeah, I did. Switch it on. I'll do it again. Okay. So, as mentioned, the internet has led to immense information, and this immense information has also led to ignorance in some parts because we're reliant on this information. It's also led to us finding it hard to distinguish the truth from false information and confusion in people's minds. For instance, if someone gave you some information about how to cure COVID-19, because this is a new virus, we are quite ignorant as well, because particularly in the earlier parts of COVID-19 in March, particularly, we didn't know much about it. So if there was information coming out, you should be having lots and lots of hot food. People were having lots and lots of hot food. And then this also led to a lot of confusion as well as ignorance as well, because what happened is that people began to ignore certain types of information because what they were getting in their world is what was the information that they had. And so this is why we say it leads to confusion, it leads to ignorance, and it becomes quite hard to distinguish the truth from false information. But this also, as we began to do our study, led to us trying to identify types of information, which is why then in the slide that follows, I've been speaking about fake news. Now, fake news has been around since about 2015. And 2015 has led us to think of news in a way that is deliberate, it's very provocative, it's very sensational, eye-catching, and clickbait. So fake news involves not only deliberate falsities, not accidental errors or innocent mistakes, and it can be quite direct and have powerful and immediate effects on people who are easily fooled and unenlightened masses. So say, for instance, if you found some news about COVID-19 that was quite provocative, for instance, we've been hearing of certain types of medication leading to COVID-19 prevention and cure, people were actually believing that as true information. And so this is why we say fake news is there. It's deliberate, it's very provocative, it's very sensational. So if you heard that, well, hey, COVID-19 prevention can occur by, for instance, moving to a certain country, and the country is showing how bright it is, that would be kind of the fake news that you'd be believing. And so this is one type of information. Then there is disinformation, which is false information that is intentionally created to mislead and misinform people with an agenda. So examples of these are like deceptive political and commercial advertisements, government propaganda, forged documents, internet frauds, fake websites, and manipulated Wikipedia entries. So for instance, it can be a government website for some certain country may form a website that will give you details about, oh, this is what COVID-19 is, this is how it took off and all that, and yet it could all be false. That is, it was there to provide some sort of government propaganda, and some forged documents have been taken to provide that information. It can be that a website is created and it says, well, if you come to us, we can provide you with some medication, and this medication costs this much, but we can guarantee you that you will get well. And so that would be kind of disinformation. Then there is misinformation, which is false information that is spread regardless of whether there is an intention to mislead. So there is a greater likelihood of true and false information appearing together. But for this, to identify this kind of information, we require substantial knowledge of the audience to determine which part of the message or news articles are true and which ones are not. So say, for instance, in some of the studies that we did, we found some non-government organization websites, such as, say, for instance, the World Health Organization or UNICEF, and they had some information that was true, and they were also trying to show what is false. But people actually took the two together and they couldn't distinguish what is true or false. And so that became misinformation for us. So we had this kind of information with us, and we went ahead, and because, as I said, we began to look at artificial intelligence and the ways that we can use it, we thought of trying to identify misinformation about COVID-19 cure and prevention. Luckily for us, during March 2020, luckily for us in that our research, but it's unlucky for the whole world, a global pandemic known as COVID-19 or the coronavirus took off in March 2020. Before March 2020, there was information about this particular virus. I'll tell you, I visited India in February, and before I was visiting it in January, I was contacting people in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, December, January, to ask them, is it safe to travel? Is it safe to travel to any country, including India? And people were like, yeah, there's nothing about it. And even when I went to India, where the institution that I was at, they were actually laughing at me because they said, well, there's nothing serious about it. There's nothing to COVID-19, coronavirus. What's coronavirus? So in March 2020, when numbers began to increase, that's when people began to take notice of COVID-19. Now, about this virus, there is no previous or former information. So, for example, if we're trying to find out how to prevent the flu, we know that there are previous cases of how to look after it. So there will always be such information. People suffer from, for instance, smallpox or shingles, and there is information about it. But in the case of COVID-19 or coronavirus, there was nothing. And this led to people undertaking numerous online searches for the cure and prevention of COVID-19. If you do look at patterns or trends about internet searches during March, April, and May, you will find that people were searching a lot on the term of COVID-19 cure and prevention. What we did find is that the messages being spread were both true and false. And the messages were spread through online social networks such as WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just at this point, can I just ask, how many of you were also informed through, for instance, WhatsApp about COVID-19 cure and prevention? Any hands up there? How many of you did get information? So if you want to prevent COVID, this is the way you can do it. Anyone? So, well, in our research, we found that there were many people inundated with information. Thank you, Chandrama. So lots and lots of people were inundated about COVID-19. At that time, I had recordings coming through. I'm someone who's lived in China, and a way of preventing COVID is this and that. And it was like, oh, really? Is this really the way? But such messages were coming through online social networks. Everyone might be amazed that I'm using the word online social networks or social media to refer to WhatsApp. But when we have been investigating online social networks, WhatsApp is one that does come up, but it's one that actually we've begun to use more as a telephone service. so a mobile telephone service. And that's why we don't think of it as a social media, but we have found that it is part of the social media categories. So in March 2020, COVID took off. And then what we found is that the non-government organization that all countries around the world were paying attention to was the World Health Organization, or WHO. And what they were talking about was that not only were they trying to cope with the pandemic of COVID-19 or Corona, but that they were really, really paying a lot of attention to the information being spread about COVID-19. So what they did find is that people were paying a lot of attention to information coming through their online social networks. This was also leading a lot to negative consequences. People were taking some of the medicines that were being told of, or ways of preventing COVID. And this was leading to negative consequences. And, as a result, headaches for organizations such as World Health Organization. And so the World Health Organization put out an announcement to say that not only were they dealing with the pandemic of COVID-19, but that they were facing an infodemic, too much information. And most of that information, they couldn't even understand was true or false. So a solution, we thought as a group, the people in Symbiosis and myself, is that we would try to use artificial intelligence to identify this COVID-19 prevention and cure information. Now, I've used this term artificial intelligence. So what exactly is it? I know there are people here who know about it, but as you always have to introduce new terms, I'm doing the same thing here. So for us, we did find when we were looking at artificial intelligence, because we had to form a theoretical background to our work, we found that artificial intelligence is the artificial creation of human-like intelligence that can learn how to reason, plan, perceive, or process natural language. And this was from Russell and Norway in 2009. But then what we also began to see is that artificial intelligence is being used a lot to identify information in social media or online social networks. So artificial intelligence was being used in computer science with the aim of deciphering data from the natural world, often using cognitive technologies that are designed to understand and complete tasks that humans have taken on in the past. So whereas you might have people who were entering data before and they would be then processing all that data, humans even had a limit. Now, with artificial intelligence, that was changing. And so what we found is that artificial intelligence was being looked at in the consumer sector and in terms of social media, but we found few studies. And so this gave us a motivation to understand this particular issue quite a lot. So, okay, we got the artificial intelligence and misinformation aspect. Remember, I began this whole presentation with older adults' information processing behavior. So we then had to understand about older adults. What is special? What is there about them that we need to study them and their information processing behavior? So when we started to form a background to it, we found that now, due to advanced technologies, people are taking a lot of care of themselves. If you think about it in terms of yourselves, how many of you are reliant on online social networks, for instance, to find out about the latest Pilates or yoga exercises, and also using maybe online social networks to become an influencer. And these influencers are leading to large numbers, and some of the people are using it for e-commerce purposes, which is leading to a contribution to the economy and a better understanding. So this is what we did find about older adults, in that, well, they are exercising, they're making contributions to the economy, and they are improving their quality of life. In turn, they are increasing in society. But in addition to it, when we began to look at COVID-19 and older adults, we found that they were older adults were being affected a lot by COVID-19. So we did hear a lot in the media about older adults having breathlessness, and then also, for instance, fever, coughs, and hospital admissions were up. But this caused a pressure on the health sector. So this gave us a motivation. So we found that there are a few studies of artificial intelligence and online social networks or social media. So there is a gap there. But in addition to it, older adults and COVID-19 was something that was significant. So then we formed the aim, which was to explore and understand how artificial intelligence, cutting edge technologies, algorithms, could be used to identify misinformation, so correct and true information. And then from there, we'd be going to the older adults and finding out their processing behavior regarding COVID-19 prevention and cure. So that's why I put a note there that this presentation is on the qualitative part of this aim. So what we did do there is we then went back to the theoretical background and we began to look at artificial intelligence. Now, when you start to look at artificial intelligence, you find that the earliest definition is attributed to McCarthy in 2007, where artificial intelligence is the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. Then in 1968, even before then, Minsky had talked about how artificial intelligence is the science of making machines capable of performing tasks that would require intelligence if done by humans. So if they were going to perform the tasks, first of all, we need many humans. So that would also mean a lot of training as well as costs in terms of money. And so what we were finding is that artificial intelligence is being used in the form of machines for scanning large numbers of internet and online social network related web pages, digital trails, and sensor-derived data in various application platforms within microseconds. Then, so we understood that artificial intelligence has an element of machine-like activities there. But then we also needed to understand what has been written about online misinformation. So what we did find is that due to the online channels, people now have free access to abundant but often questionable healthcare information. Here in England, we have a particular organization, the National Health Service, and they have a website, and we usually told, can you go to that website and you can find out more about any particular ailment, any particular disease, or anything of the sort. So now people have free access to such healthcare information. So if I needed to find out what are the symptoms of COVID-19, I could get onto the NHS website and find out about that. I'm sure in India you have that, as well as in Poland and the United States and Italy. But what we also found is in the literature that people were referring a lot to social media for knowledge and information instead of seeking professional advice. I myself, I'm part of Facebook and Twitter and all. And initially, in the early days of Facebook, I used to have friends asking one another, oh my God, I've got arthritis. What can I do to cure it or prevent it? And people would then be telling one another, this is what you can do. And I did ask someone, why are you doing all this? And they said, well, professional advice, you need to get appointments or you need to pay for it. And in this case, we didn't have to do that. We can just talk to our
Sorry to
friends.
interrupt you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, your voice is low. If you could.
I have been trying. Is it better anymore? Is it any better? Hello?
Now the voice is okay. Yeah, now it's good.
Okay. So what we found is that people were referring more to social media for knowledge and information instead of seeking professional advice. When we asked people about that, they said, well, first of all, to get an appointment is quite difficult. As the population numbers are increasing, doctors are getting inundated with patients. It's also expensive sometimes. Doctors do not have time. And then also there is a limit of time. Doctors cannot give you all the time. With online social networks, social media, friends can tell us, and friends may have gone through it. They may be professionals themselves, GPs or surgeons, GPs meaning general practitioners. So then I could get the information whenever I want and wherever I want. But this was impairing healthcare decision-making. What this can also result is that society was becoming a bit more apprehensive, and it wasn't that willing to approach health authorities in general. So what we then found during our literature review on COVID-19 prevention and cure is that people were using WhatsApp to get a lot of healthcare information about COVID-19 prevention and cure. And Kenya, UK, Brazil, and India were countries that were being inundated with information about COVID-19 prevention and cure. So when we began to look at the older adults and online misinformation, we found that there was a double-edged sword in there. With the internet, people became more independent and started to acquire information about COVID-19 and just general healthcare information. So when we started to look at that, we also found that older adults, some of them, they use technology a lot and they're very techno-savvy. These are people like me, being from the 50s right up to about 65, 68. But there are others who are above that who are not so technologically sound. And so that's why a digital divide was also occurring. But in addition to it, we found that there were different categories being formed. There were the pre-seniors, they are the people aged 50 to 64, and then the young old who were 65 to 74, and then the old who were 75 to 85 years. So what we did find is that older adults were, in some instances, very suspicious about any online content. So they said, we don't care about anyone sending us any messages. So if my aunt sent me some information, I'm not going to bother with it because I don't believe in any of this online content. But then there were others who would really, really pay a lot of attention, and even any little pinch of salt that they were taking actually was being attributed to, oh, maybe this will be a way of preventing COVID-19. So what we did find is that older adults treat the infodemic, the information that is coming through the online social networks, with a sense of relative security. And they trusted that information a lot and found that there was little misinformation coming through. So what it was that older adults were treating that infodemic, the information coming through the online social networks, with a sense of quite a calm, secure view. They thought that most of the information that was coming through was good information and very little misinformation. But in addition to it, when we began to look at the background, we had to find out about trust, because we were using interpretism as well as thematic analysis. And when we were looking at trust, There's source credibility. So where is the information coming through from? If the information is coming from a government website and the government is trusted, then we would still find that, yeah, sorry, we'd still find that as credible information. On the other hand, if we do find that there is a medium credibility, that is more, okay, if you trust Facebook more, you'd be getting that information through. So this was the issue about trust. In addition to the research approach, we had to use qualitative approach, which was research based on data. And we were using semi-structured interviews where we had some questions, but when we were questioning the people, if we had more questions, we could add them in. And we used Zoom and Teams as well as WhatsApp for the data collection. When we were looking at the sampling, it was more non-random, snowball, and convenient sampling, where the selection criteria were older adults aged 50 years and above, and those who had regular internet usage and experience. I have a table there of the demographics, and I'm very sorry. I wanted to put it all on one slide so you can see the text, the font size is really small. And if the slides will be shared, then please do feel free. We had 20 respondents, and we had people from different ages as well. We had people from the age of 50, and they went up to right to the age of 87. When we were looking at the data collection, we used open-ended questions. So, for instance, we would ask them, how did you acquire the information about COVID-19 cure and prevention? And each interview lasted between 1 to 1.5 hours. What we did is that in the earlier artificial intelligence study, we had used Snopes, and we had gathered posts from the World Health Organization, China Daily, Facebook, YouTube, and we used 2 examples of true posts and 2 false ones to get examples out to the older people. So what we did find is that pages that were from organizations that were not dealt with often or regularly. So for instance, I don't know how many of you are accessing the World Health Organization website. If you don't, and I asked you to look at it, I did find within the older adults, they would say it's unknown. I don't trust such a website. And so what we did find is that it was quite difficult to convince people that this was a genuine website and there was genuine information coming through. There was a story from China Daily, and people looked at it and they said, oh, this is from China. They're claiming that COVID had emerged from there. So we don't trust it. We don't care. Any of that information is false. No trust. So in the end, from all our work, we came to the conclusion that an algorithm has no prejudices. There are no preconceived ideas, no views, and an algorithm will do what it is meant to do. So whatever we train it to do, it will do it, and there will be no confusion in its mind. Human beings, on the other hand, they would be very concerned about, okay, the website design, the spellings, the layout, and all these kinds of aspects. Humans were also very reliant on their classic communication channels, such as their general practitioners, friends and family, work colleagues. They also sought information about COVID from the government website, because here in England, they were trusting the government website, gov.uk, and they were also trusting bulletins coming through from their general practitioners as well as government bulletins. And what we did find through our interviews is that people were saying we should have a dedicated COVID-19 website. In England, we have a gov.uk website, and that website, people say, is quite confusing and cluttered. And so they said if we could have a COVID-19 website that would be quite useful. But with an online social network, people said, we will not really follow it and we will not pay attention to it. A very surprising and interesting finding we got was that due to the lockdown, people were working from home, just as so many of you are within your home environments. So we had to look at the organizational aspect as well. And what we found is that when misinformation was coming through, any information about COVID-19, work was very important. So for instance, at the moment, I am paying attention to this and this is my work. If any information comes through on COVID-19, I'm not really going to pay attention to it. And so like one person said, I paid attention to other sources, such as the official letter from the Prime Minister and the booklet about COVID-19, but not information sent to me from online social networks. So this then led us to the conclusions. Well, first of all, older adults can get confused by details that are not familiar to them. And older adults are influenced by any prior or previous assumptions, predispositions, previous online experiences, as well as any suites of heuristics related to website features. Older adults also relied on traditional media more than any new ones like online social networks. And if you get messages such as, for instance, from the World Health Organization, which are based on attractive pictures, older adults may actually say that is misinformation. As one person said, this does not look like a page that a UN type of organization would have. I would have expected it to have fewer pictures and less content than it presently has. So the limitations of our work is that, well, I had only 20 participants, and so I can't generalize, but I have now formed an understanding of what misinformation is all about and how older adults process information, which is how I could talk to you today. But in addition to it, we did find that older adults who used digital platforms and the internet had different biases, and that can cause a limitation. And finally, our study was based on the UK, and so this is a limitation. If it was international, global, then it would be different. So, well, I hope I have informed you quite a bit here, and well, I'm very happy to take any questions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time.
Welcome.
Due to unavoidable circumstances, Professor Vincenzo is unable to join the session. So let's now move to the QA session. Due to paucity of time, we'll be able to take up only 2 or 3 questions. Asta ma'am, I hand it over to you.
Hello. Ma'am, the first question is, how is AI helping in COVID-19 situation?
Okay, so for us, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear.
Okay, so for us, artificial intelligence is really good in that it allows us to investigate different types of information without having any opinions. So for instance, like I said earlier, if you've had a bad experience with, for instance, the World Health Organization, you may just find that information that they are conveying as false. You may say, I don't believe this information. And yet, when you go to the fact-checking websites, they're actually finding that those kinds of websites are true. And so artificial intelligence is trained by us. And so it can ensure that any such confusions are reduced. However, there is a proviso. We are training it, so it's our bias. So if someone is training the algorithm from India, maybe the bias will be from India. if it's from the United Kingdom, it could be their bias. So you have to watch out for that. But at least it's much less when you're using artificial intelligence than human beings. And you cannot process such large pieces of information with human beings. With human beings, you have a limit of the information being processed. With artificial intelligence, you can use much more.
Then the second question is, how are the methods, techniques, and skills to apply AI during COVID-19 period?
Sorry?
How are the methods, techniques, and skills to apply AI during COVID-19 period?
Okay, so you're asking me what was the artificial intelligence method that we used for the study to look at the COVID. Am I correct? Am I correct, Asta? Okay. I do remember that we used neural networks as well as deep learning. So, and a bit of supervised learning, because we then had to identify the type of data that we wanted to use. So we used manual processes to gather some of the posts, but then later on we went on to an automated one. Does this help?
There is another question.
Ma'am, there is last question. Sir,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. There is
Yeah.
last question. What psychological tools can be used for effective information processing in the elderly during these times?
So what psychological? That I wouldn't really know. But what I would say is that older people need to have confidence in the information that they are looking at. And so if someone is confident that this information is coming from a true source, then they will apply that information and use it in a way. So one thing is that psychologically, we get prejudiced quite a bit. So say, for instance, we find here, I don't know how it is in India, but here we have had a lot of online phishing. So people will be sending you emails with information that is incorrect, but psychologically, because you believe that that address is coming from a source that you trust, they have been clicking onto it and people have been losing their personal details, such as their dates of birth, any account details. So this is something that I believe is something that we need to look at psychologically.
So, Jyoti ma'am, it was very
Yes.
nice to hear you. And there is one more question, one more question I'd like to ask on behalf of one of the audience, Mr. Dilip
Yes.
Chaudhary. He's
Yes.
asking, as we know, robots can act as an interface between a doctor and a patient, wherein they can carry out diagnostic and treatment processes, reducing the human contact and risk of transmission of infection during the coronavirus pandemic. So,
Yes.
how can we apply that in rural areas? You want to ask that?
So what we are trying to say is that although robots are being used, because I understand the social distancing aspect as well as the transmission of the virus is being prevented or reduced by using robots. So you're saying in terms of misinformation, how can we use robots, is it?
Yes, in rural areas specifically.
Okay, again, robots will be programmed. So they'll be trained. So in this way, the robots, first of all, if we form a trust in them, then we can have them go to the information and we will have programs to identify the false and the true information. So in this way, they can help us to, well, first of all, reduce COVID-19 prevention. They will ensure that there is more of COVID-19 prevention, but in addition to it, they will be trained to identify what is true or false information. However, again, the bias is a very important issue. And that is something, whether robots or anything that we use, we will need to take into account.
Yeah,
Have I-
yeah. I think it gives the answer to the query. And so now over to Gitika, madam.
Yes,
You
sir.
want to take some other questions?
No, sir. With this, we come to the end of the session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your views. And as we come to the conclusion of the first webinar of the 4 webinar series for iWaves 2020, organized by the International Cell of IIS deemed to be University Jaipur, I wholeheartedly thank our distinguished speaker, Jyoti ma'am, and other guests for accepting our request. It was indeed a great opportunity to have you all at iWaves 2020. I also thank all our participants who came from all corners of the world to make this event a great success. I invite you all to our next webinar on 15th August 2020, 6 p.m. onwards. Participants to note that the feedback link is shared on the WhatsApp group and on the chat window as well. It is active for the next 45 minutes and certificates will be given to those who correctly fill the feedback form. Thank you all once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you in London. Bye. Bye, Amit.
Hello.
Hi, Vijay.
Yeah, bye. Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving your time and sharing your knowledge with us. And
You're welcome.
I'm definitely sure that it will be help to so many researchers and budding software professionals. They will definitely use the knowledge. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I would like to thank all the participants to come and to spare their time here. And we hope to see in the next webinar all of you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.